Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Over this half hour, we'll be speaking with two members of the Long Beach City Council. We'll start with James Johnson, then we'll move to Gary DeLong, who had been a candidate for the U.S. Congress. He was not successful. We'll speak about election 2012. Then we'll have some fun with a reporter from the Long Beach Press-Telegram. His name is Tim Grobady. He wrote a book called Locations in Long Beach. We'll take a look through history of Hollywood coming down to Long Beach, but we start with James Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me,
We
Brad.
appreciate it. And let's start our program with kind of a regional look at the economy of Southern California. You recently attended a conference called Accelerating Southern California's Economic Recovery. Tell us about the conference.
Well, you know, the Southern California Association of Governments is basically the 6 counties in Southern California coming together. How can LA work with Orange County, with Ventura County, et cetera, to encourage growth? We talked a lot about how the private sector creates the growth, but in the public sector and government, we need to help facilitate that by doing things like making permitting easier, moving forward transportation projects, basically setting that framework in which business can grow.
So let's talk about some of those issues, because there's no doubt that you need to see strong public-private partnerships. But what we do know is that for better or for worse, the public sector has been shedding jobs as a result of tight budgets, and our unemployment rate continues to be pretty persnickety. In LA County, it's about 10.5%. In the city of Long Beach, 11.4%. So we're well above the national average. What can be done in light of the public sector shedding jobs and the private sector nervous to hire?
Well, we talked about that. You know, things are a little bit better, but we still have a ways to go. One thing is we can take projects that are on the books and move them forward as fast as we can. For example, the Long Beach Courthouse. We talked about it for many years, but now we're finally building that. And by doing that, you're going to have a brand new courthouse that's going to keep private sector jobs, all the lawyers and other folks, bail bondsmen,
of course,
right here in the
all
community.
those lawyers. The two of us are lawyers, so it's okay.
Well, that's right. Another thing we can do, though, is transportation projects. What are we going to do to make sure this port stays competitive?
Well, let's talk about the port. We
absolutely.
have to, because recently there was a strike. I believe it lasted about 8 days. It was a very small union that was able to shut down the strike because of sympathy boycotts, essentially. The other union members would not cross the picket line. As I understand it, because it was so short, the effects were not that dramatic. But that's scary to think that a small union, and I'm not bashing unions, I'm just saying, it's scary to think that a small union can shut down a huge, major economic engine.
Well, that's right, Brad, and it also reminds us how important the ports are. You know, every day they're closed, that's $1 billion potentially lost to the economy. So, you know, I think in a work shortage, everyone loses. Labor loses, but also management loses, and consumers lose. So I think what we all want to see is how can we work together to make sure employees are treated fairly, but also make sure those goods keep moving to the ports, because that really is, you know, where the nation gets all its imports.
So do you feel as if that a deal was struck that can be a model for future labor negotiations, or was it just putting a Band-Aid on this current situation?
Well, what ended it in the end was basically both sides agreed to federal mediation, which I think is very positive. I think sometimes when you have contentious negotiations, it helps to bring an outside party to sit down and say, you know what, we both have more to gain by working together than we have by stopping negotiations and not working. And when people aren't working, obviously no one's getting a paycheck, so there's a lose-lose on both sides.
And at the same time, we know that the Panama Canal is going to be expanding in a very significant way. And there's the moniker Beat the Canal. We hear that quite often in Southern California. I know the Middle Harbor project is going to be taken off.
Absolutely.
But are we concerned about the Panama Canal and what it could siphon away from the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach?
Well, absolutely. And, you know, competition, though, makes you great in this country. And I think by building the Middle Harbor, that's going to be a $1 billion project. It's going to make us very competitive. By rebuilding the Gerald Desmond Bridge, it's another $1 billion project. That's more jobs in our community now, but also in the long term. I think at the end of the day, we are the closest place to China. It makes a lot of sense to move goods from Asia through the United States, through the Port of Long Beach,
about Oakland?
and we have the infrastructure.
Oakland, Ensenada, I mean, they were happy when we had a strike, no doubt.
Well, they may have been, but I think at the end of the day, what industry wants to see is infrastructure improvement. They want to see you have the roads to handle the goods, that you have the ability to take goods on dock, that you can bring in the ship,
Right.
unload those containers right onto rail and move them to Chicago. So we're investing now in ways that'll be good for the economy down the road.
Let's talk more about transportation. As you know, the voters of Los Angeles County, in a squeaker, voted down an extension of a sales tax for transportation projects. It needed 66.6% of the vote. It got 66.12%. We still have that sales tax in place, but it's not an extension. Where do we go from here in terms of public transportation projects?
Well, I think it's really a twofold question. First of all, can we show the public that we're using every dollar now as efficiently as possible? And if we are, we may need to go back and say we need some more dollars. So for example, in Long Beach, with our pool of dollars, we said, you know what, we need to spend half of that money on streets on maintenance. By doing that, we saved $2.4 million in the first year alone, because when you maintain a street, it doesn't fall apart and cost you 10 or 20 times
Pay
more.
a little now, save money
Right.
later.
So if we can show the voters, I think, in the future that whether it's in Long Beach or on the freeways or statewide, that we're not just going to build new projects, we're going to maintain the projects we have, not let them collapse, then I think they'll say, you know what, we have more confidence and we may be willing to invest a little bit more. So I really think it's a two-part question.
But that being said, we do have the re-election of a Democratic president who has been a big supporter of infrastructure projects. The stimulus package early on in his first term definitely got the ball rolling. We have Measure R still on the books, which was
Absolutely.
that half-cent sales tax for 30 years. Where do we go from here? I mean, we still don't have LAX connected to Long Beach or whatever it may be. Where do we go from here?
Well, first I think you have to prioritize. You don't have enough money to do everything. And that's, LAX is probably the top priority. Here we are the biggest city in the United States not to have a direct connection from transit to our airport. That needs to end. And we need to finish that first before we build new subways and so forth. That needs to be our top priority. But also I think we can go to the voters and say, you know what, maybe 2/3 is too high of
There's been a discussion of
threshold.
that.
Right, but I think part of that, if we're going to lower that, say to 55%, I think we need to do things like build in the maintenance costs so we can guarantee people, we're not just going to build something and then let it fall apart. We can guarantee them this will be part of the life cycle costs.
Have you spoken with, for example, your members of the legislature, Ricardo Lara in the Senate, Bonnie Lowenthal in the Assembly? That's what would have to happen. It's a state issue.
Right. Well, we're talking to the Southern California Association of Governments
I see.
on this issue and formulating a package. It's part of our economic stimulus plan. One thing, if the average transportation project takes 17 years to build, if we could make that 12 years, in other words, just shorten it by 5 years, we'd save this region $6 to $8 billion over a 5-year period. That's a lot of money. So I think we can get the job done if people feel like we're being as efficient as possible.
At the same time, we do have rail, we have cars, we also have bikes. And guess what? Long Beach has just been named one of America's most bike-friendly cities. How did that happen?
Oh, absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Well, it took a lot of hard work and a
Right.
lot of residents saying, demanding it. Long Beach is an older city, which means we have a lot of assets. We've got a beautiful art community here. We've got old commercial corridors that are thriving. And people enjoy
Beachfront.
and a beautiful
Right.
beachfront. So what we've done is say, you know what, our streets really should be thoroughfares, not just to move cars, but to move cars, people, and bikes. So it really needs to be multi-use. So we've done things like bike lanes across the city, making sure people feel safe. It sounds simple, but if you make people feel safe riding their bikes, they'll ride their bikes a lot more often. So what we're seeing is, if you build it, they will come.
So I think I spoke with a member recently of the Long Beach City Council about a plan that you see in other cities. I was in Taipei recently, for example, in Taiwan, where you literally go up to a kiosk, there's a bike, you take it, you ride somewhere, and you drop off the bike somewhere else. Is that something that's being considered here in Long Beach?
Absolutely. We just signed a contract
That's
to
what
do
I
that
thought,
at
yes.
no cost to the city. So this is an exciting program where you have a private vendor come in and you'll have a bike share program.
Bike share program seems just ingenious. I mean, especially in a city like Long Beach where it's fairly compact.
That's right. So in dense, exciting cities like Long Beach, people want bike share. But to have bike share, like I said, you need to have the sharos, the areas that basically show people how you share between a bike and a car. You need to have the bike lanes. You need to make sure it's safe for folks. So I think what you're going to see is a win-win for everybody. You're going to see better for bike riders, better for pedestrians, and even better for people who do insist on staying in their cars.
Amen. His name is James Johnson. He is a member of the Long Beach City Council. When we come back, we'll be speaking with one of his colleagues. His name is Gary DeLong. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. This is Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Our guest, Gary DeLong, he is a member of the Long Beach City Council. And sir, I want to speak with you about a few things. First, we'll start to talk about the port. There was recently a strike. A small union was able to cripple the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. How can that happen?
Well, particularly, I think LA had shut down almost 100%, and then 3 of the 6 operators in Long Beach were closed. But basically, they put up a picket line, and the other union trades weren't going to cross the line.
And it's that simple. It was they wouldn't cross the picket
Correct.
lines, and that's why the entire port shut down.
Exactly.
And as I understand it, the economic ramifications were pretty serious.
Well, they had the potential to be serious had it gone on. In the short term, because of the short strike, the cargo went to other destinations.
But that's bad for Long Beach.
It's
and
bad
Los
for Long
Angeles.
Beach. It was
Ensenada
okay for the
was
economy.
dancing a jig.
And Oakland and
Yeah.
other places.
So,
But it wasn't overall horrible for the United States
but
economy.
even in the midst of a holiday season when presumably toys are coming over
Yes.
from Asia, it just wasn't long enough? Is that simply
Right.
what
It
happened?
took them a few days longer. It got backed
Right.
up a little bit, but now everything's coming through the system.
Now, is there anything that can be done to prevent a long-term stoppage? I know, for example, I remember Ronald Reagan in the early 80s was able to put a stop to an aviation strike. Is there things that can be done? I'm not advocating for that. I'm just
Yes.
wondering. I mean, this is, deals with the economic and national security of the nation.
Well, I think the best thing you can do, particularly from an elected official, is to advocate both sides coming together and trying to find a common ground. Some elected officials did that, like the mayor of Los
Right.
Angeles, but
Antonio
candidly,
Villaraigosa.
yes, but candidly, other elected officials picked a side, and it's not helpful when you immediately pick a side.
Did the mayor of Long Beach get involved?
The mayor of Long Beach, Bob Foster, was working behind the scenes
Fair
to
enough.
help broker a deal.
So now that the strike is over,
Yes.
are we feeling as if labor relations are mended, or are we concerned that something could pop up in the coming months and years?
No, I think they're mended because they've been without a contract for a couple of years, I think since 2010. Now they have
Right.
a contract. So I think we're good for a while, and the clerks ought to be happy. Their average pay went from $160,000 a year to $190,000, so they did okay.
I would like to make that amount of money.
They did well. Well, and that's fully loaded. That's not just compensation, that's
Right,
benefits and so
pensions
forth.
and everything.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears if we may,
Sure.
and I want to speak with you about the recent election. As we know, you were the Republican nominee for the United States Congress in a district that was ultimately won by Alan Lowenthal, who was the Democratic nominee. I'm going to be completely candid. If there was ever a Republican that I thought could win in a Democratic-leaning seat, it would seem to be you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you are a moderate Republican
I am.
in your votes.
And I still am.
And you still are. But if we look up and down the state, moderate Republicans got hammered. Let's look at in Riverside County, John Tavallone, a moderate Republican Riverside County supervisor. Parents were Democrats, father was an elected Democrat, lost to a Riverside Community College District trustee, a gay Asian man.
Yes.
I mean, amen that we can, elect
Yep, sure.
someone regardless of their status, but wow, what happened?
Well, I think the state certainly turned left. I think there were between Proposition 30 and Proposition 32, it brought out a tremendous Democratic vote. I do want to clarify something. You mentioned being a Republican nominee. I want to tell you, I did.
I know. Yeah, it's a
I
top
got a-
two primary, and
And I got a
understand
ton
that.
of Democrat
Right.
support in the
No, I know
primary as
that,
well as
yes.
the general election.
Right. But that being said,
And would be if I ran again.
Yeah.
I would expect to do very well with both
but
Republicans
that
and
being
Democrats.
said, if you look at the electoral victories on the Democratic side,
Yes.
it was a complete sweep. The Democrats won every single close race in California, and then some. Won races no one ever thought they would
Correct.
win. What does that mean?
Well, but I think you have to look at it and say, why did that happen? Right? Our
And?
speculation today is because of the propositions that are on the ballot, it really brought Democrats out to vote. And these weren't thoughtful, look at each entity, each race on its own Democrats. These are people that were coming out for a single issue, and as long as they were there, they were voting a straight
voter
Democratic
turnout
ticket.
was down vis-a-vis 2008 in California.
Yes.
And so arguably, it couldn't be a huge spike in voter turnout. You just think it's a different mix of voters?
Oh, very different. What we're anticipating is Republicans were actually didn't come out. They weren't enthusiastic about what was on the ballot, and Democrats came out far above their voter registration
here's what we know
percentage.
today, although the numbers could change. Latino voters, there was an increased voter turnout by 5 points vis-a-vis
Yes.
2008. Asian Americans, 6 points, double. Under 37 points, whereas the white electorate dropped 8 points.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw serious spikes in voters that trended overwhelmingly Democratic.
And youth, right? I mean, I think I
Right,
read
under 30.
18 to 28 was 23%. I mean, it was huge.
So where does the Republican Party go from here?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. I could tell you that I think they continue to struggle, but what the party needs to do, I would say this for either party, is you need to be positive. You need to focus on what you can do for the country, what you can do for America. Stop knocking the other guy. Stop complaining and taking shots at the other party.
Let's talk about California, because we know
Yes.
nationally the Republicans had some real challenges with comments about rape by 2 Republican nominees for Senate. Seats that were expected to go Republican went Democratic as a result of these comments. You had the Republican nominee for president talking about self-deportation, which was problematic for many voters. But it really tarred the Republican Party in California. I mean, you can say a lot about Republicans in California, but look, I interview Republicans all day, every day. It's an economic message that's being spoken in California amongst Republicans as a general proposition, and yet
It is, but you need to do more. Like, for example, you comment on self-deportation. I think the Republican Party needs to really seize the immigration issue and talk about how we're going to fix it, how we're going to provide a path for those that are here, how we're going to reform our immigration system to allow folks to be able to come into our country that bring unique sets of skills. Be positive.
but
How do you help the country?
Right, but even today, there are machinations on that issue. And from the analysis I read, there just aren't enough Republican votes in the House of Representatives to get comprehensive immigration reform through, which only plays into the narrative,
That's right.
rightfully or wrongfully, that the Republicans are hostile to individuals of color.
Then the Republican Party will cease to exist at some point. I mean, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it can come out with a more positive message.
A bold statement, no doubt.
Well, it's reality.
And so what does that say for the future of people like Gary DeLong? Do they leave the Republican Party? Do they become independents? Do they start a new party? Do they become Democrats? Hypothetically speaking?
Well, I think what I would say is that either you're going to see a surge of moderate Republicans, they're going to seize the party away from the far right, or you're going to see these moderate Republicans go and become independents.
So what does the future bring for Gary DeLong? I mean, through it all, you may not have been victorious in November, but I think it's fair to say that your reputation remains strong. It was just a tough year and a tough district.
In fact, I would say even stronger now than it was when I started this
Right,
process
name
18
IDs,
months.
spikes.
Most of the community leaders came on board our campaign. Any mayor in the district that took a position, Democrat and Republican, endorsed the campaign.
You got some Democratic support.
I out-fundraised a sitting state senator by 40%. I mean, it was a great campaign,
Right.
all except the end.
Right.
But I would say we need to look at the numbers. Let's see what they come tell us. If truly it was just as extraordinarily Democratic turnout, then I would say there will be opportunities in the future which we'll take a look at.
Well, we know that in 2014, for example, the sitting mayor of Long Beach has a choice to either run as a write-in candidate or choose not to run and do something else. You're a member of the Long Beach City Council.
I am.
Only elected Republican, seems to get along with a lot of different people.
I do.
Is that on your radar?
It's not. Mayor Foster has done an outstanding job for our city. He would be a very tough act to follow, and I've let him know that I will not be following him.
Why?
In order to be good at something, you need to be passionate about it. And
You've been passionate about Long Beach.
But I don't wake up in the morning saying, if I was mayor of Long Beach, this is what I could accomplish. And I have that passion. I had it in the congressional race to say, if I was a member of Congress, this is how I could move our country forward. I just don't feel that passion.
What about Sacramento?
I think Sacramento is irreparably broken at this point.
Really?
I don't see where, if I was there,
Even with
this
the
is what I would do.
Democrats
If
in
I
the
were
two-thirds
king.
majority?
Well, let's give them a chance.
So
Let's give him a chance.
So when are you up for re-election? Or can you
no,
be up?
No, I'm termed out as well as the mayor. He and I came in at the same time. And,
But could you run as a write-in?
I will not be running as a write-in.
You
I
know
know
that?
I know they say never in politics, but I cannot imagine any scenario that I would run as a write-in. I just respect the voters. They spoke. They said they want term limits. I respect that.
So we just don't know.
We don't know.
You
But
have to
after
do
the
the
first of the year,
analysis.
next time we get together, I might have some
Great.
information for you.
His name is Gary DeLong. He is a member of the Long Beach City Council. My name is Brad Pomerantz. You're watching Charter, California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. He is back, Tim Grow-Beatty. He is a columnist for the Long Beach Press-Telegram. He just released his second book. It is called Location Filming in Long Beach, from Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times to Showtime's Dexter. There are films being shot here in Long Beach, not surprising, but I didn't realize the depth of Hollywood's history in Long Beach. It makes sense, but I just didn't know it.
Right. Well, yeah, it kind of
Evolved?
well, it evolved, and it started back in the silent film era, where they were making hundreds of films a year, just little one-reelers.
And let's talk about the organization that really got the ball rolling, and that is Balboa Studios.
Right, Balboa Films.
Yeah, Balboa Films. Tell us about Balboa Films.
Well, it started basically. It started in 1913, and there was a little studio there that had big dreams, but
Of course.
it never turned out to be anything. And it started out on Alamedas in 6th Street, where the Museum of
Latin American history,
Thank
Latin
you.
American art,
Latin
right?
is now. And they had several, and it grew to several acres, several buildings. They took over, they owned a large amount of land at Signal Hill to shoot westerns at.
And as I understand it, part of the reason why Balboa was able to take off is because Long Beach already had somewhat of an infrastructure
Right.
in vaudeville.
Yeah,
Tell me about
it had several theaters down at the Pike and along Ocean, and all in that area. They were all used for vaudeville, but they were easily converted into movie theaters when the movies started taking off. So they were, while other cities were having to build things.
Right.
And the talent was there. They had lighting people, they had props people.
But many
They had actors.
right? But many communities faltered when talkies came in. Yet Long Beach did not. I mean, almost out of the gate, they got Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times in 1936, Strike Me Pink in 1936. I mean,
Fatty Arbuckle was huge in getting the thing off the ground too.
which is terrific. And then in 1946, an Oscar-winning
Yeah.
picture for Best Picture came to Long Beach. Tell us about that.
The best years of our lives. And what's interesting about that is, the Long Beach Airport recently has gone through a
Right,
renovation.
tell us, yes.
And they discovered, I think they knew it was there, it was carpeted over, a beautiful mural on the floor in the terminal. And you could see that floor pretty clearly in the very opening scene of The Best Years of Our Lives.
Now, throughout the 50s, Hollywood succeeded. We had Gorilla at Large here in 1954, but then the iconic film in 1963, Mad, 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 Mad World. Right. Tell us about that.
That's just almost a travelogue of Long Beach. You can see there's Imperial Hardware on Anaheim. There's a mad chase scene with taxis that goes around the Rainbow Pier, up Long Beach Boulevard, down Anaheim. It's just all over the place. Everywhere you look, you can see Long Beach. The roller coaster, the Pike.
And when you think about the 1960s, it is hard to deny that the Mod Squad was just an iconic television series that to this day we still revere. It became a feature film. Tell us about the Mod Squad's connection and attachment to Long Beach.
Well, there were a lot of TV shows that had Long Beach connections. Probably better than the Mod Squad was there's the opening of Gilligan's Island.
Oh, you're kidding.
When the minnow goes on a 3-hour tour, it leaves out of the marina downtown.
I mean, that is icon. I mean, that is
So you see
really-
that every week.
One of my favorites from your book, though, is a film called Head from 1968. Tell us about Head, who it starred, and who made a series of cameos.
Well, Bob Rafelson made it, and it starred the Monkees, who were huge.
Monkees?
The Monkees, and they were huge at the time. And the Vincent
68, I mean, that's really the
68,
pinnacle.
Yeah. And it was they were opening the Vincent Thomas Bridge. It wasn't open yet, but
Right.
they used it in the Monkees. They were doing they were filming a fake dedication of the bridge, and the Monkees go running up the road. I don't know why, because I
Right.
haven't seen the whole movie.
Okay, fair enough.
But they go running up the bridge, and then they all jump off and into the water. Then psychedelic lights come
course.
on, and
It's
the
1968.
Porpoise song is on, and
But there were other people who popped up in that film.
yeah, everybody was in it. Ronald Reagan popped up.
Oh,
in it.
just Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
I mean,
Ronald
that's remarkable.
I don't know what his job was at the time.
Right.
Probably president of the Screen Actors
Exactly.
Guild. And Jack Nicholson was in it. A lot of people were in it. It was an amazing film. It's cool to watch.
And then we move into the 70s, and what is one of the most iconic series of the 70s? Chips.
Yeah,
I mean, Eric Estrada, come on, Chips. And where was Chips filmed?
it was filmed. One of the very first stories I went out on was. It was still back in the days when editors were saying, "Gee whiz, they're filming a show in Long Beach." So they sent me out to the bottom of right outside your studios, at
Right.
the bottom of Bixby Hill. And Eric Estrada and his partner were on motorcycles, but they weren't on motorcycles. They were just on,
Of course,
motorcycle toys that
right.
were on a trailer,
Of
so they
course.
could show them talking to each other. And I was heartbroken to find out that they weren't riding.
It is
their own.
devastating when you
So
see
I
real
can ride a
TV.
motorcycle
I
on a
know,
trailer.
I know. Into the 80s, some well-known films, some iconic films. We had Blue Thunder, Surf 2, Ferris Bueller. I mean, come on, Ferris
that's huge.
Bueller.
Right.
Bueller. How did Bueller wind up in Long Beach?
That was on
Oh,
Country.
and Lethal Weapon also in the 80s.
That was in Los Cerritos, where they used a lot of houses, American Pie houses. Were in there. Donnie Darko's house.
Right.
Ferris Bueller, of course,
Right.
and other people. Just a ton of houses there. You can do a whole tour of Los Cerritos. Just
And let's move into the 90s. There was, is it called Red Corner?
Red Corner. That was a beautiful film. I mean, it wasn't a good film, but it was.
Right.
It was beautiful. The Long Beach Airport has been featured in a ton of movies, but this was the
Why?
prettiest one.
Is it just, it's smaller and easier to navigate?
Well, you know, the architecture of the terminal looks just so cool, and it could be in a lot of cities.
And where was it in Red Corner?
In Red Corner, it was in Beijing.
Yeah, there you have it.
And they lit it up really nicely. And Richard Gere, it starts out in the restaurant there inside the terminal.
Right.
Then they walk out onto the tarmac where his Gulfstream is ready to take them back, and there's kind of a heartbreaking scene. But the place looks beautiful. It's one of my favorite Long Beach scenes. And they also use, speaking of going all over the place, in Basketball, which was another weird movie. It was a Calcutta airport, and they had
See?
Brahma bulls walking around and rickshaws.
And then 2 years later, in 1999, an Oscar-winning Best Picture was in Long Beach called American Beauty. Where did that film? I can't imagine.
They used some of Polly
Right.
for the school scenes. And, a lot of times they'll just do little quick scenes as long as they're in town. At one location,
Right.
they'll do just a driving scene or something.
But the best news of all is that Long Beach's days as a filming location are not behind us. They are still very much alive today, because we know that with filming comes a tremendous amount of economic activity. They got to eat, they got to go to the dry cleaners, they got to go wherever they're going, they got to drink. We know they drink a lot.
They shot Lethal Weapon 4 on a big chunk of the East Village.
Really?
On First Street. And it was an opening scene, and they just totally tore the city apart. They blew up cars.
Good.
Set trees on fire, broke storefront
Good.
windows, and they spent like over $1 million just on glass. There was a glass store that did real good business with them.
I have to tell you, I live on a
Wood.
street, and I'm constantly getting notices because I live across from a park saying we're filming here. And I'm glad, because that means there's more commerce. It helps our local economy.
And there's a chapter in here you might be interested in where it tells you how you can get your house in the pictures.
I know
Make
people,
a little money that
I know
way.
people who have agents for their house.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, they have an agent for their house. But in modern day, right now, we see filming every so often, or maybe more frequently, Dexter on Showtime, CBS CS Miami.
That got canceled, so no more.
No more, but let's just pretend. But the good news is that Miami's not Miami, it's Long Beach.
Right. Yeah.
Who knew? And then NCIS, also
CSI?
here? No, isn't NCIS? It says,
Oh, yeah,
It says right
the
here.
LA
NCIS
version.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
LA NCIS. It's NCIS LA.
Right.
That's here.
Yes.
So
So we can even play LA. That's how much.
I was going to say. So as we conclude, how much fun was it to write this book? I mean, you must have had a real ball. Just
was no fun at all.
Come on, you must have had a real ball going back into the archives.
I wrote
and
most of it
figuring
on
this out.
vacation and at 4 o'clock in the morning and stuff, because I have a day job that
5 days a week.
5
your
days a
column.
week.
Every
Yeah.
single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
a lot of it's compilations, a lot of it's stuff that I had done already, especially towards the back part of the book. But I did have to find every picture that was filmed in Long Beach. There's more than 340 feature films that are in this book.
If you're a lover of Long Beach, if you're a lover of Hollywood, you will love this book. His name is Tim Grobady, a columnist with the Long Beach Press-Telegram and the author of Location Filming in Long Beach. My name is Brad Pomeranz. Thank you for watching California Edition.